Okay, this is another example of finding the equation of a line, given some information about that line. Only this information is a little bit different. In the previous video, we were given two coordinates that lie on that line. So we were given 2 points on the line. We then calculated slope and then went through the process to find all three forms of that line. Here the information is a little bit different. It says find the equation of a line with a slope of 4. So reading this, we already know that our m is going to be equal to 4. So we don't have to go through that process to calculate slope. It's given to us in the problem here. And we want that line to pass through the point 3 comma negative 2. So let's get started with this. We're going to start with slope-intercept form again and then just work our way through the other three forms. So I'm going to start by labeling this 3 as x1 and the negative 2 as y1. We don't have an x2 and a y2 here because we're not given a second set of points. However, since we're given the slope, that is totally okay. So if we're dealing with slope-intercept form first, let's go ahead and write out that form. So we know that slope-intercept form of a line is going to be y equals something x plus something, right? And if we're actually writing out the symbols, we know that this is y equals m x plus b, where m is our slope and b is our y-intercept, and b can be solved for. So given in the problem, we already know our slope. So let's go ahead and plug in our slope for m. So that's going to look like y equals 4x plus b. And we're also given this point, this y1, or this x1 and y1. So if we plug in this point for this equation here, we can then solve for our b value, and then just plug in our b and our m up top, and then we'll have the full slope-intercept form of that line. So I'm going to plug in my x1 for this x here, and my y1 for this y right here. So that's going to look like negative 2 equals, I have 4 times my x1, which is 3, 4 times 3, plus b. And now we just need to solve for b. So simplifying this just a little bit, we're going to get negative 2 equals 12 plus b. And if we subtract 12 from both sides, we get negative 14 equals b. So that's our b value right there. And from the statement of the problem, we know that our m is 4. We know that our slope is 4. We plugged it in here. So the full slope-intercept form of this line is going to be simply just plugging in 4 for our m right there, and then plugging in negative 14 for our b right there. So if this were an exam or something, we'd want to simplify a little bit and say y equals 4x and then just minus 14, and that is our slope-intercept form of the line. So another important thing is the standard form. Last time we got our slope-intercept form. We did some algebra to get down to our standard form, and we're going to do that same exact thing here. So I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides of this equation here. And what I'm going to be left with is negative 4x plus just y is going to equal negative 14. So what I did was I just took this 4x and I moved it over onto the other side of the equal sign. So this is starting to look like our standard form. If we go back to the paper from last video, we see that the standard form is ax plus by equals c. So we could actually just put that right over here. So we know that we have ax plus by equals c, and right now we have our a would be negative 4, our b would be just 1, and our c would be negative 14. The last thing to do with standard form is check our set of rules and make sure that we're following those. So a has to be positive. So a is the term in front of the x. So our a here is actually going to be negative 4. So a in this case is not positive, so we need to get rid of this negative. A, B, and C also have to be integers. It looks like in this example they are all integers. We have negative 4, 1, and negative 14. So in order to get rid of this negative in front of the a term, what we can actually do is multiply both sides of this equation by a negative 1. So if we multiply this negative 4x plus y by a negative 1 and this negative 14 by a negative 1, what we're going to end up with is a positive 4x minus y equals 14. So the general rule of thumb is when you're multiplying the entire equation by a negative 1, the signs are going to flip. So this negative becomes positive, this positive becomes negative, and this negative becomes positive here. So this guy is going to be our standard form for that line. So our last thing to do is we want to also get our point slope form. So as a quick reminder, for point slope form, it has the form y minus some y naught, I'm going to leave that as a blank, that equals m, which is our slope, I'll leave that as a blank as well, and times x minus some x naught, which I'll leave as a blank also. So we need to figure out these. So I'll write this under here. This is going to be y naught, this is going to be x naught, and this is going to be m. And so we just need to plug these guys in, and then we have our point slope form of the line. So one thing that we know is that our m is our slope. And we found here that our m was 4. It's just given in the problem. So here it's a good bet just to, we already know our slope. We're going to plug in 4 for m right there. So this y naught x naught, by the definition of point slope, this y naught x naught is just going to be a point that lies on the line that we're trying to describe. So it's actually going to look something like this. Y naught and x naught is just going to be a ordered pair that is on that line. And we're trying to describe a line that passes through the point 3, negative 2. So our x1 and y1 would be very good candidates for our x naught and y naught. So I'm just going to plug in my negative 2 here for my y naught. So I put a negative 2 right in there. And then my x here is 3. So a 3 will go right here. And then if we do just a little bit of simplification, we're going to get y, not equals, sorry, y plus, because we have two negatives, y plus 2 equals our slope, which is 4, times x minus 3. And that right there is the point slope form. So there is another example. You're given slightly different information about the line, but you can still find all three forms of the line in slope, intercept, standard, and point slope.